There's a strange kind of quiet that comes with deployment. It's not the good kind, not the peaceful, Sunday morning kind. It's the kind where the world keeps spinning without you, and you're stuck in a different time zone, pretending not to think about what's happening back home. When I left for my 6-month rotation overseas, my wife and I were good. Or at least, I thought we were. We had our routines. Every morning she'd text me a picture of our dog, Murphy, a lopsided mutt with a permanent look of surprise, usually with some caption like, "Your son misses you," or "Guess who stole the blanket again." It was our thing. For the first month, the photos came like clockwork. Even when she was busy, I'd get something. A blurry shot of Murphy mid-run, a video of him barking at a squirrel, little pieces of home that made the sand and diesel smell easier to ignore. Then one week, the picture stopped. At first, I figured she was busy. Work, errands, whatever. She still texted, but it was different. Short, vague. Like she was trying to say just enough to keep me from asking questions. "How's Murphy?" I'd ask. "Good." That's it. "Yeah, he's fine." No photos. No stories. Just fine. If you've ever been away from someone you love, you know that's the word that makes your gut twist. Fine means, I don't want to tell you what's really going on. I try not to read into it. Deployment messes with your head, and paranoia is basically part of the package. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then came the first red flag I couldn't ignore. I was on a video call with her one night. Well, night for me, mid-afternoon back home, and I asked where Murphy was. She glanced off screen, then said, "Oh, he's at the park with a friend." That was new. Murphy doesn't like many people. And a friend? Since when? Who? I asked. Just a friend from work. He loves dogs." She said it too fast, smiled too wide, like she'd practiced the line in her head before she said it. 2 days later, my buddy Jake, who lives back in our town, sends me a message. Jake's the kind of guy who notices everything and says nothing, unless you're one of his people. Then he'll burn the world down for you. "You want to tell me why your wife's holding hands with some guy at the dog park?" I stared at the message for a long time. Asked him to clarify. He said he'd seen her. Murphy on a leash, her laughing, some tall guy in a ball cap with his arm around her. I asked if he was sure. I asked her who he was, Jake said. She told me it's her cousin. Since when do cousins walk around holding hands? I told him to get pictures. He didn't disappoint. A few hours later, my phone buzzed with a set of photos that made my stomach drop. Her in leggings and a hoodie I'd bought her, looking at this guy like he hung the moon. His hand on her hip. Murphy sitting between them like he didn't know the leash connected to the wrong person. I sat there in my bunk, staring at those pictures, feeling the kind of cold that starts in your bones and works its way out. You can't just get in your truck and drive over when you're 7,000 miles away. You can't call her out face to face. You can't even raise your voice without drawing unwanted attention from half your unit. All you can do is sit and think and plan. Because here's the thing, deployment teaches you patience. It teaches you how to wait for the right moment. And the right moment, I decided, was going to be when I came home. But I wasn't coming home like she expected. No, I was going to walk back into that house without warning. And she wasn't going to be the only one in for a surprise. Deployment teaches you two things real fast: how to wait and how to listen. Not to people. People run out of interesting things to say on day 3. I'm talking about listening to patterns. The rhythm of the bass. The difference between a normal generator hum and the kind that says, "This thing's about to die," and take the lights with it. The way a routine goes off by half a beat and your gut yanks the handbrake. Back home, our rhythm used to be clean. Morning photo of Murphy, lunchtime text about whatever disaster her office was cooking up, evening FaceTime, where she complained about traffic and then asked me to do the taxes when I got back like that was somehow a relaxing activity. It wasn't thrilling, but it was ours. Predictable in a way that makes men like me feel less like a ghost. After Jake sent those photos, my wife with Captain Ball cap in his hand where mine should have been, the rhythm didn't just skip. It changed time signatures. Exhibit A, nicknames. She always called me Sarge, which is funny because I'm not one. Inside joke from when we first met, and she thought every uniform came with a hat and a power complex. Suddenly I'm Babe. That's what you call someone when you're trying to keep all your script straight. "Hey babe, how was your day?" "Miss you, babe." It sounded like she was texting over her shoulder. Exhibit B, the dog. If there's one living creature on earth that doesn't lie, it's a dog. You can train a dog to sit, to roll over, to cheat on its diet, sure. But you can't train the joy off their face when they hear their person's voice. On our calls, I'd whistle and say, "Where's my boy?" Murphy used to barrel into frame, toenails skittering, tail turning into helicopter blades. Now he'd peek in like a teenager made to say hello to his mom's weird friend, eyes flicking past the camera to something off to the side. One time I swear I heard him bark, the low confused one he saves for strangers who smell like aftershave. Exhibit C, the background noise. I'd call and she'd answer from the kitchen, smile tight, the kind you glue on for dentists and debt collectors. "Just me and Murph," she'd say. Then a man's voice would drift in from somewhere, low and casual, a question about coffee or keys. She'd lunge for the mute button like it was a grenade. When she came back, she'd be all breathless apology. "TV. The neighbor's TV. It carries through the wall. Funny, we live in a detached house and Todd next door spends his evenings yelling at the Browns, not suavely asking where the French press is." I didn't confront. Not because I'm scared, but because I'm greedy. There's a special kind of satisfaction in letting someone hang themselves with the rope they bought on sale. So I started collecting details the way a guy collects screws that fell out of a shelf. Useless alone, lethal in a pile. I asked about her day, and she said errands. Okay, which ones? Just stuff. She never used to be a stuff person. She was a color-coded list person. If she went to the store for Basil, I knew the Basil's childhood nickname by nightfall. Now it's stuff. Right. On a rare long call, she mentioned going to a new vet because the old one's receptionist is rude. Murphy's tag flashed when he jumped up, bright, shiny, brand new. Jake's a dog person, which is to say he's a people person with standards, so I told him to do a morning drive past the old vet. He called me later, laughing. "Your wife's car is parked out front of the old clinic," he said. "She's in there getting nail trims for Murphy because he hates the new groomer." Thought she said the receptionist was rude? Receptionist is chatting up a tall guy in a ball cap while your wife pays. Didn't catch the whole convo, but I heard, "See you Thursday." These were the crumbs. Small, realistic, boring crumbs. No hacked passwords, no smoke and mirrors apps. Just human sloppiness and the kind of loyalty friends like Jake give you for free. I asked him to swing by the dog park again. The one with the crooked metal bench and the weird little memorial plaque for a golden retriever that loved tennis balls and steak. He went at different times, played the part of a guy trying to socialize a shy rescue. He said the tall guy was there a lot. Tall guy threw a disc badly, like he learned sports from YouTube. Tall guy drove a dented gray Tacoma with a ladder rack and an "Eat Local" fish off and sticker peeling off the bumper. On his third recon, Jake called me while pretending to tie his shoes. "You want a name?" he asked. "I want everything." Met a dude who recognized him. Name's Mark Collins. Works part-time at a marina out on County Road 7. Bait, boat slips, whatever. Owns a mixed-breed husky who keeps stealing people's sandwiches. And get this, Mark's married. The word hit me like a slap and a solution at the same time. Married means fault lines. Married means paperwork. Married means someone else's life exploded next to mine, and maybe we could pick up pieces together. How sure? Guy pointed to a woman in blue scrubs meeting Mark by the park gate once, Jake said. Said that's his wife. Nurse. Elena. Seen her in town forever. I can ask around without turning it into a parade. Do it, I said. Quietly. Over the next week, I learned more about Mark than I knew about my neighbors after 3 Super Bowl parties. He flirted with cashiers like he was auditioning for prom king. He told people he was in between real gigs, while his wife carried the benefits. He had a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. The usual resume for a man who thinks takeout containers are Tupperware and fidelity is a setting on a stereo. Elena, on the other hand, everyone liked Elena. ER nurse at St. Mary's. Worked doubles. Brought muffins for night shift once a month. Solid as oak. The kind of person you hope sticks around when your life hits the ditch. Jake tracked her schedule by doing what normal people do. He showed up for coffee where hospital folks go after a shift ends and listened. Nurses complain like soldiers joke. It's how the air gets out. On day 2, he texted from the parking lot. She's here. We agreed he shouldn't ambush her in a crowd. I needed her to hear this from someone whose impulse wasn't going to be fight my wife in a produce aisle. We also needed to be sure. Sure like, show me the photos, sure. So Jake played the long game and asked a mutual acquaintance. Small town, we have a ton. to see if Elena was open to a sensitive conversation about something she probably already suspected. The friend came back 20 minutes later and said Elena wrote 3 words. Please. Thank you. I got permission to call her. Which is a funny sentence to write about talking to a stranger about wreckage in both our living rooms. But that's how it felt. Like we were about to open mail addressed to current resident, Payne. Her voice was tired when she answered. Not weak. Tired like steel that got used for what it was built for. Hi, she said. And the way she said it told me she'd prepared herself to hear anything from, your husband slept with mine, to, I found your dog. I told her my name. Told her where I was. Overseas. Counting time by Chow Hall breakfast burritos and the length of my shadow at 3 p.m. Told her I had a wife who used to send pictures of our dog every morning, and a buddy who had eyes. I told her about the park, the hand-holding, the cousin lie. Said the name Mark, and heard her exhale like a balloon that had been hiding behind her ribs. Yeah, she said. Just that. Yeah, the most honest word in English. It can mean I knew, I didn't want to know, and I'm not surprised all at once. I'm not calling to dump this on you, I said. I'm calling because I want to do something about it, and I figured you might too. We talked in clear, careful lines. She told me she'd noticed absences that came with gym bags and came home smelling like beer she didn't buy. She said he started going fishing, even though he hates getting up before 10. She said he'd started saying, babe, too, and she laughed without humor when I told her that script always shows up with the same handwriting. We were not 2 strangers. We were 2 people on different ends of the same break. I have a proposal, I said, because if you're going to be cold, be efficient. I come home in 3 weeks. She thinks I'm home a week after that. I want to land on a Tuesday at midnight and pretend I'm still a hemisphere away. I want to put a bow on this for them. Meaning, I want a party, I said. A fake surprise. Friends, neighbors, cake nobody eats, the cheap banner from the party outlet. I want you there. I want him there. And I want a projector. There was a pause where you can hear the ground shift under someone. Then a smile in her voice. Projector? I've got photos, I said. Jake's a saint. We'll keep it PG-13. No one needs to see hands where they don't belong before dessert. Just enough truth arranged on a wall with witnesses. She didn't answer right away. Then she said the thing I didn't know I needed until I heard it. Okay, let's do it. We went from strangers to coworkers in a way that felt almost clean. She'd handle a guest list that included accidental neutrals, people who wouldn't take sides until gravity told them which way to fall. I'd handle logistics from my end. What time I'd be home. How to keep my wife from moving the venue by deciding she was too tired that day, where we'd stashed the projector so it didn't scream, this isn't about sheet cake. We established rules. No yelling in front of kids. No touching anybody. No speeches that end up on Facebook with emojis. Precision, not chaos. Exposure, not therapy. When we hung up, she said, thank you like she meant it. I said, we'll make it clean. I slept for the first real time in a month. In the mornings after that, my wife went back to texting like everything was normal. Hope your day is good, with a confetti emoji. Murphy misses you. No pictures. I replied like a man gratefully married to the army instead. Busy day. Stay safe. Minimal syllables. Maximum patience. Jake kept up his rounds. He saw Mark put his hand on the small of my wife's back at the grocery store like they were auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. He saw Elena once, watching from her car, eyes like winter. They didn't see each other. It's funny, the geometry of betrayal. How close the lines pass without touching until they crash. Meanwhile, I started rehearsing the little things you need to get right when you want a scene to land. The doorway where the banner would hang. The spot where the projector would throw the brightest. The sentence I would say first, like a pin pulled with 2 fingers. Thanks for coming. I've got something to show you. And one more thing. The part that's going to make some people clutch their pearls and some people nod like they've been here too. I told Elena that after the party, after the reveal, after the room emptied and the cheaters scrambled to rearrange their lies, I wanted one more chord in this song. Not for closure. Not for healing. For symmetry. Cold, ugly symmetry. She didn't answer right away. You mean? I mean exactly what you think. I could hear her measuring the distance between anger and disgust, and whatever lies between. We'll talk about it, she said. After, I agreed. Patrols end. Blizzards end. Bad nights end. After isn't peace. It's just the next thing. But sometimes the next thing is the only way to keep breathing. 3 weeks. That's what stood between me and my front door. Between me and a woman who used to send me pictures of a dog who'll love me no matter how ugly the next hour gets. Between me and a plan that felt less like revenge and more like a demonstration. Not fireworks, just a flare. A bright, clean light in a dark room, long enough for everyone to see what they've been tripping over. I started packing early because it calms the mind. Rolled socks, folded uniforms, a small box labeled home. Inside it, I put what mattered. A coin from a guy who didn't make it, a collar with a tag that says Murphy in scratched letters, and a folded print of a photo Jake took from half a field away. Two people holding hands that had no right to be holding anything together. I slipped the photo back into the box and shut it. 3 more Sundays. Then Tuesday midnight. Surprise. When you've been in the military long enough, you get a certain sixth sense. You can smell an ambush before you see it, feel a lie before you hear it. That's why, the moment I saw those dog park photos from my buddy, I knew exactly what I was looking at. Not some friendly handshake. Not a neighborly hug. No, this was the kind of hand-holding you do when you've just whispered something into someone's ear that would make polite company blush. And the cousin line? Please. I've been lied to by guys with AK-47s in their laps. My wife's poker face was amateur hour. The next week on base felt like walking around with a grenade pin in my pocket, and no grenade. Just the pin. All day, all night. My brain kept replaying the image of her with him, smiling like I was already dead. I stopped responding to her half-hearted, love you texts. I didn't ask for pictures of the dog anymore. And she didn't notice. That was the worst part. Then came the move. I wasn't going to just storm home and start screaming like some reality TV husband with veins popping out of my forehead. That's the kind of reaction cheaters expect. No, I was going to come back like a ghost. Quiet. Invisible. And then I'd make sure her little fantasy bubble popped in the loudest, most humiliating way possible. First, I needed intel. My buddy, the same one who'd sent me the photos, agreed to keep running into them at the dog park. He's the kind of guy who can get anyone talking without them realizing it. And sure enough, 2 accidental chats later, he had a name. Scott. Mid-30s. Works construction. Drives a dented silver F-150. And jackpot, married. Her name was Emily. She was a nurse at the county hospital. According to my buddy, she was petite, always wore her hair in a bun, and looked like she had a permanent headache. Which, if she was married to Scott the dog park Casanova, made sense. I called her from an unlisted number the next day. She answered like most nurses do, brisk and tired. I introduced myself, gave her the short version of the situation, and waited for the click. Instead, she was silent for a long beat, then said, figures. Turns out, Scott had been coming home late for weeks. Same excuses, overtime, helping a buddy, stuck in traffic, but Emily knew better. She just didn't have proof. Until I gave her the digital smoking gun. I could almost hear the shift in her voice. She went from sad to sharp in under 30 seconds. If you're thinking what I'm thinking, she said, I get off at 6 on Friday. We met at a diner halfway between her hospital and my base. She was exactly as my buddy had described. Tired eyes, neat bun, sensible shoes. But there was a flicker in her expression that said she wasn't just here to commiserate. She wanted in. We traded details like we were planning a raid. And in a way, we were. The plan came together over cheap coffee and a slice of cherry pie. We'd host a surprise party for my homecoming. Mutual friends, family, neighbors, anyone who'd be delighted to see the brave soldier back from overseas. We'd rent a projector. During the toast, I'd play a short slideshow I'd put together, a few wholesome deployment pics, a shot of me with the dog, and then the dog park hand-holding, zoomed in, slow fade, followed by a tidy little video montage of texts, dates, and times. No narration, no yelling, just the truth, projected 6 feet high. Emily's role? She'd be there, front row, sitting beside Scott. She'd hold his hand right up until the lights dimmed. And when the affair reveal hit the wall, she'd let go, stand up, and walk straight out. By the time the check came, we were both smiling. Not happy smiles. No, these were the tight, cold smiles of people who'd been wronged and were about to make it right. I walked her to her car, shook her hand like we were sealing a business deal, and said, Friday. 6 sharp. She didn't hesitate. Wouldn't miss it. The week leading up to my return was one long, slow burn. I didn't tell my wife my actual flight date. She thought I'd be home the following Friday. Plenty of time for her to get the house ready and rehearse whatever welcome home act she thought she was going to sell me. But my real flight? Tuesday, midnight. I'd be on U.S. soil, back in my own town, 3 full days before she expected me. Emily and I kept our communications short and strategic. A few texts about guest lists. A quick call about projector placement. We wanted this surprise party to feel completely legitimate to my wife and Scott, so there couldn't be any tells. No mutual friend acting weird, no odd last-minute additions. The goal was for her to walk in thinking she was about to hug me in front of 30 smiling faces, and instead watch her entire double life go up in smoke. Jake was our boots-on-the-ground guy. He made the calls, booked the community hall, cheaper than renting a restaurant, and the sightlines were perfect for a big screen, and spread the word that Sarge was coming home. He kept his tone casual, the way you do when you're planning something sweet, not surgical. By Friday morning, we had confirmation from 23 people, friends, neighbors, co-workers of mine, a few from hers. Enough to make the room feel full without getting chaotic. The hard part was waiting. I got into town late Tuesday, grabbed a motel room 3 miles from our house, and sat there staring at the same beige curtains for 2 days. I didn't dare drive past the house. I didn't want to risk her or Scott spotting me. Instead, I used the time to fine-tune the slideshow. The first 30 seconds were harmless. A few shots of me with the guys overseas, a blurry picture of Murphy chewing on my boot, a sunset from the base. Then came the shift, Jake's photos from the dog park. My wife in her gray hoodie and leggings, head tilted towards Scott like she'd been cast in a Hallmark movie. Scott's hand cupping hers while Murphy sat between them, leash looped casually around her wrist. And finally, the kicker, a sequence of timestamps, locations, and text messages. Nothing filthy, nothing a kid couldn't read, but enough that every adult in that room would connect the dots. Friday evening, Emily and I met at the hall an hour before the guests arrived. She was in her scrubs, hair up, no makeup, a calculated choice. She wanted to look like she'd just come from work, like she'd put zero thought into tonight. In reality, I could see the effort in her posture, the deliberate calm. She was steadying herself for impact. "You ready for this?" she asked, handing me a coil of extension cord. "Been ready since the day Jake sent me those photos." We set up the projector, tested the slideshow, and checked the audio. The first 30 seconds played, harmless, heartwarming. Then the next slide clicked in, and the room felt colder. Even with just the two of us standing there, the weight of the images filled the space. Emily didn't say anything. She just nodded once, sharp, like a soldier checking a loaded magazine. By 6:30, guests started filtering in. There was the usual small-town chatter, people catching up, asking how long I'd been home, how deployment was. My wife arrived at 6:45, right on schedule, wearing that practiced smile she used in holiday photos. She spotted me from the doorway, and for a split second, the act almost worked on me. She ran over, threw her arms around me, kissed me like she was the devoted, patient spouse she wanted everyone to believe she was. Scott came in 2 minutes later, looking like he'd been told there was free beer. He clapped me on the back, grinned, and said, "Man, good to have you home." I shook his hand and said, "Thanks for looking after Murphy." I watched his eyes flicker, just a split second, before he smoothed it over. My wife's laugh was half a beat too loud. Emily slipped in behind him, brushing his arm like nothing was amiss. She gave me a small nod, our silent signal that she was in position. The room was warming up, people talking, drinks in hand. Jake moved to the light switch. I stepped forward, raised my voice just enough to carry. "Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. I just wanted to share a few moments from the last 6 months before we get to the food and cake." The lights dimmed. The projector hummed. Slide 1. Me in uniform, grinning with the guys. The room made that collective ah sound. Slide 2. Murphy chewing on my boot. Laughter. Slide 3. The sunset over base. A couple people clapped. Then the dog park. At first, people squinted. Then the second photo hit. Her hand in his arm around her waist. The room went very still. My wife's face froze. Scott shifted in his chair. The next slide, timestamps, location tags. Then, a screenshot of a text she'd sent him. "Murphy's worn out. You wore us both out," winky face. Timestamped for the same day she told me she was homesick. A ripple went through the room. Not loud, just a low murmur, the kind that says people are recalibrating everything they thought they knew. I didn't say a word, didn't look at her. I just let the images run. When the final slide faded to black, the lights came back on. Emily stood, let go of Scott's hand, and walked straight out the door without a glance back. My wife opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Scott muttered something about needing to talk and followed Emily into the parking lot. I stayed where I was, hands in my pockets, scanning the room. Some people looked at me with pity, some with respect, some like they'd just learned a secret they wished they didn't know. And my wife? She sat there, cheeks flushed, jaw tight, looking like she'd just been dropped into a foreign country without a map. The party wasn't over yet. But her double life? That was done. If you've ever been in a firefight, you know the moment right after the first shots. Not the noise, but the weird silence where everyone's figuring out what just happened and what comes next. That's exactly what the room felt like after the lights came back on. Except here, the casualties were reputations, not bodies. My wife sat frozen, wine glass halfway to her lips, blinking at the now blank wall like maybe if she stared long enough, the images would change. A couple of her friends, the kind who always posted #couplegoals selfies with us on Facebook, suddenly found something very interesting on the floor. Nobody was making eye contact with her. Jake was leaning against the far wall, arms crossed, watching her with the kind of smile you get when you've just seen someone get caught stealing cookies they swore they didn't touch. Me? I just stood there. I didn't need to say anything. The point of a projector is it speaks for you. The first to move was Scott. His chair scraped back, loud in the quiet, and he muttered something about stepping outside. He didn't even look at my wife, just went straight out the door after Emily. That broke the spell. Conversation started up again, low and fast, people leaning into each other's ears. My wife turned to me, her face working through a cycle of emotions. Shock, confusion, anger, calculation. When she finally spoke, it was in that high-pitched whisper people use when they're pretending they're not furious. "What is wrong with you?" she hissed. I kept my voice level. Wrong with me? I'm not the one holding hands at the dog park with a married man. Her jaw tightened. "We'll talk about this at home." "Sure," I said, "if you still live there." That shut her up. She sat back, eyes darting toward the door like she was debating whether to chase Scott or stay here and try to do damage control. I didn't give her the time. I walked out into the cool night air. In the parking lot, Emily was leaning against her car, arms crossed, while Scott talked at her. Not to her, at her. He had that pleading look, hands moving fast like maybe if he gestured enough, she'd forget the 30 people inside who'd just watched his greatest hits on the big screen. She wasn't buying it. "You humiliated me," he was saying. Emily's laugh was sharp. "No, you did that yourself." I walked up, and Scott's face shifted from pleading to defensive in a blink. "This was your idea, wasn't it?" he snapped. I shrugged. "You give me too much credit. All I did was show people the truth." Emily didn't look at me, but there was the slightest twitch at the corner of her mouth. She'd seen the same thing I had. Scott's hands were empty. No keys, no wallet. He'd come out here thinking he could talk her down, and now he was realizing she was already gone. She opened her car door, slid in without another word, and drove off. Scott stood there watching her taillights, then turned back toward the hall. "Guess you got what you wanted," he said to me. I smiled. "Not yet." I left him standing there and walked back in. My wife was gone. No goodbye, no scene, just vanished. Jake caught my eye and gave a slight nod toward the door. "She left with him," he murmured. "Perfect," I said. The rest of the party fizzled out pretty quick. Nobody knew what to say, and most didn't want to get caught in the crossfire. Within 20 minutes, the hall was empty except for me, Jake, and the projector humming quietly like it was proud of its work. Jake helped me pack up, then followed me back to the motel. We didn't talk much on the drive. There wasn't anything left to plan. The first strike had landed. Now it was time to see what the fallout looked like. I didn't have to wait long. At 11:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from my wife. "I can explain. Please just come home." 2 minutes later. "I made a mistake. We can fix this." Then, at 11:24. "Where are you? This isn't fair." I didn't answer. By 11:40, Jake was snoring in the next bed over, and I was scrolling through her messages like I was checking weather updates. Midnight brought another. "If you won't talk to me, I'm going to Scott's. We'll see how you like it." I actually laughed out loud. She thought this was a contest. She thought she could make me jealous, that I'd come running to win her back from a guy whose idea of romance was warm beer in a parking lot. What she didn't know was that Emily had already told me her plan. Scott's truck was parked outside their little starter home, but his key wouldn't be working much longer. She was filing for divorce first thing Monday, and she'd already told him he'd have to find somewhere else to stay until then. So when my wife showed up at his door with her overnight bag, thinking she was sliding into some cozy rebound arrangement, she was going to find out she'd just checked herself into a week on a couch that smelled like low tide. I went to bed that night not happy. Happiness is too soft for this kind of thing, but satisfied. Phase 1 was over. Phase 2 was already in motion. And Phase 3? That was personal. Because as much as I'd enjoyed the public reveal, I still had one card left to play. One last move that would make sure she never forgot exactly who she underestimated. Emily and I had talked about it in careful, clipped sentences. We'd both been betrayed. We'd both been made to feel replaceable. And neither of us was interested in forgiveness. So, yes, the next part was going to be for us. And for them. And I'd make sure she watched every second. There's a kind of satisfaction you get from a clean operation, when all the moving parts you set up click together like they were built for it. The party had been that. A precision strike. No yelling. No chasing people into the parking lot. Just the truth served on a 6-foot screen in front of witnesses. But precision isn't the same thing as closure. I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for permanence. Something that would stick in her head every time she thought about stepping out again. Something she couldn't explain away with "it was a rough patch," or "I made a mistake." I wanted the memory to feel like a splinter she'd never be able to dig out. Emily understood that, which is why, 2 days after the party, I found myself sitting in her kitchen, Murphy curled up at my feet, while she made coffee like we'd been doing this for years. Her place was small, neat, and quiet in a way mine hadn't been in months. She moved like someone who'd been through a fire and was now just making sure the doors were locked. When she set my mug down, she didn't sit right away. Just stood there for a moment, looking at me the way you look at a puzzle piece you're about to click into place. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked finally. "Absolutely," I said. She took something from me. "I'm taking something back." Emily nodded once and sat across from me. "Then we do it tonight." The plan was simple. My wife had moved in with Scott after the party. I knew this because Jake had driven past the bait shop apartments, a squat 2-story building above a fishing supply store, and seen her car parked out front, right next to Scott's dented F-150. No curtains in the windows, peeling paint on the trim, and the smell of low tide drifting up from the marina. A far cry from the house we'd built together. Emily also knew that Scott worked late on Tuesdays, inventory night at the marina. That meant my wife would be there alone until at least 10 p.m. perfect. At 8 p.m., Emily picked me up in her silver Civic. We didn't talk much on the drive. There wasn't anything to say. We'd gone over every detail. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about execution. We parked 2 blocks away and walked. The air smelled like salt and diesel. Somewhere nearby, a buoy bell clanged lazily in the harbor. When we reached the building, Emily rang the buzzer for Scott's apartment. It took a moment, then my wife's voice crackled through. "Who is it?" Emily kept her tone casual. "Hey, it's Emily. Scott asked me to drop something off." A buzz. The door clicked open. We climbed the narrow stairs, the carpet worn thin in the middle. My wife was standing in the open doorway when we reached the top, barefoot in leggings and one of Scott's t-shirts, hair pulled back. For half a second, she looked confused. Then she saw me behind Emily, and her face went pale. "What the hell?" she started, but Emily brushed past her into the apartment like she owned the place. I followed. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom, a living area with a sagging couch, and a kitchenette that smelled faintly of fried fish. Emily turned to my wife and smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind you give someone right before you drop the match. "You should sit," Emily said. "You're going to want to see this." My wife glanced between us, then shook her head. "I'm not." "Sit," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it had the weight of a command. Deployment teaches you how to make people listen without raising your voice. She sat. Emily and I didn't rush. We talked, loudly enough for her to hear, about nothing in particular. Work, the weather, the fact that Murphy seemed to like Emily's place, all while moving around the apartment like she wasn't even there. Then Emily looked at me, and I nodded. She crossed the small room, leaned down, and kissed me. It wasn't for us. It was for her. I didn't look at my wife when it happened, but I didn't have to. I could feel the heat of her glare, the way her whole body went rigid. I could hear the sharp intake of breath she made, the sound of someone realizing they weren't in control of the narrative anymore. We didn't linger. We didn't make a scene. Emily straightened up, grabbed her purse, and walked to the door. I followed, pausing just long enough to meet my wife's eyes. "Now we're even," I said, and then we left. The next day, the fallout started. Emily served Scott with divorce papers before he'd even finished his morning coffee. My wife tried to move back into our house, but I'd already changed the locks. She called, texted, even showed up at the gate on base, but I didn't respond. By the end of the week, she and Scott were both out of work. She'd been fired after word of the party got around her office, and he'd quit the marina after too many "how's the dog park" jokes from customers. With no income and nowhere else to go, they ended up right where I wanted them, crammed into that studio apartment above the bait shop, staring at the peeling paint and each other's mistakes. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine them there, the smell of fish and salt water in the air, the sound of the buoy bell outside, both of them wondering how they went from the thrill of sneaking around to this. And me? I sleep just fine. Because the thing about revenge is, it's not about the moment. It's about the echo. And I made sure theirs would last a very, very long time. Subscribe to the channel